This video on Sailboat Cruising Tips is brought to you by SailingToucan.org and will cover suggestions for a small cruising sailboat. Your host, Captain Farmer, is a 100-ton master with sail and radar endorsements. I and First Mate sailed out of Panama City, Florida for weeks at a time aboard a Catalina 25, and we also raced. Captain Farmer is also a member of the Power Squadron Navigation Committee, helping rewrite text for navigation courses. Here's the Catalina 25 Starfinder that we raced and cruised for 23 years, inland and offshore. Check with your local sailing club about youth and adult sailing classes to get you started correctly. Racing is the fastest way to learn to sail efficiently. These are just some of the many considerations in becoming a long-distance cruiser. It takes training and work, but the rewards are great. Here are some of the many courses offered by your local America's Boating Club. The sail course, navigation, and cruise planning are particularly important for cruisers. The items covered in the sail course will give you some idea of the depth of these courses offered by America's Boating Club. Beginning in the fall of 2021, America's Boating Club 2-hour seminars will be available free to the public. YouTube sailing videos may help, and please check out our other free educational videos that are indexed on our SailingToucan.org website. There are surveyors and then there are surveyors, and some are much more competent than others. I'm no longer active in the Society of Naval Architects and Marine Engineers, and thus hired a surveyor to look at Toucan. Make sure anyone that moves your boat is fully qualified. On the water, your insurance covers if you hire a captain. On the road, make sure he has adequate insurance and any needed permits. If she has just been sailed or raced, you will certainly need additional equipment. Practical Sailor magazine is a consumer's report for sailors. Read the manuals and check for updates. My universal engine is now Westerbeek. Here's the layout of our 29-foot cruiser that I drew for instruction of our guests. There's a lot of hidden equipment that you need to be aware of. Check all of your manuals and locate the equipment now. Some equipment may not be easy to get to for servicing. Make sure you know where everything is and have plugs for removable items in your hull. Make sure your anchor is secure in case of rough weather, and put long-lasting, low-current LED light bulbs in all of your navigation lights. No one anchor works best for all types of seabed. Danforths usually don't hold well in grassy bottoms. Our Rockner is a 25-pounder. Our washdown pump is portable and uses an overboard pickup and plugs into our DC power. It can be used as a fire pump if needed. It can dewater our hull or our dinghy. The forward V-berth is a good place to sleep in the summer because of the forward hatch ventilation. Our steps pivot into the cabin floor area to provide access to our 25 horsepower West-to-Beak engine on 3 sides. All of our electrical and electronics are on the port side near the battery bank. The HF single sideband ham radio is for GRIB weather files and short emails when offshore. Most boats use a manual or electric head, and you need to carry spare parts and know how to rebuild a head underway. You can see the galley sink to the left here and the steps up to the cockpit. We have 3 teak hatch boards and a smoked Lexan sliding cover for the hatch. The fire port allows me to inject halotron into the closed engine compartment in case of a fire. The aft hull area provides some additional storage above the fuel and hot water tanks. There never seems to be enough storage on a small cruiser. Ours has 6 bunks, but 2 people don't have enough space, and 4 would be moving things around to get to other things most of the time. Dry bags can keep food from getting wet on a rainy dinghy ride. If you're ex-military, you know digging clothes out of a deep duffel bag is a real pain. What you need is always on the bottom. We have larger upper standing rigging and smaller lowers. Plastic pipe on the shrouds will keep the jib sheets from hanging. Thank goodness our coach roof has rails that are stainless steel, so no varnishing is necessary. We have a roller furling jib and Jiffy reefing for the main, so we can reduce sail from the safety of the cockpit. Lines should be led to the cockpit on cruisers for ease of handling and for safety in heavy weather. Self-tailing winches mean you can adjust them with one hand. You can use winchers if you don't have self-tailing winches. We have 2 small hatches for the salon area to provide some ventilation. It's hard to sail using the jib if the forward hatch is open, as the jib sheets often catch on it. A dodger helps keep blowing rain out of the cabin, so the hatch can be left open for ventilation and access during bad weather. We use a small Lowrance chart plotter at the helm station and a laptop running OpenCPN in the Saloon. This plotter has AIS display capability. We have hot and cold water shower aft just forward of the Toucan nameplate to port. Showering on the swim platform helps keep the head dry. You need to understand true and apparent wind directions to properly trim your sails. Make sure all telltales are streaming correctly. The self-steering wind vane removes the need to trim your sails unless wind speed changes significantly. It will not keep you on course if the wind changes as it steers to the apparent wind. Our bilge has both automatic and cockpit manual bilge pumps. Here you can see the DC current brake in the HF SSB counterpoise using capacitors. Propane is convenient for cooking, but can be dangerous if not handled very carefully. Make sure you test your system. To check for leaks, turn the stove and the oven controls off. Open the master shutoff and solenoid valve, then close the master shutoff valve, and the gauge pressure should hold if you don't have any leaks. Cooking utensils need to be stainless or coated in some way to prevent corrosion. Plastic plates like those you see here are preferable aboard. With popular retained heat cooking, you heat the pot and insulate it so it keeps cooking while you're sailing. 5-gallon buckets and a plunger with holes in it can be used to wash and rinse clothes. You'll need to let them soak for some time. Your boat should have a master AC circuit breaker that opens both hot and neutral wires within 15 inches of your shore power connector. It's most likely hidden in a lazarette compartment. If your white neutral and green ground are connected aboard, it will trip the shore power ground fault breaker in the supply pedestal. Your master power panel should have a reverse polarity AC indicator. The 1, 2, or both battery switch position helps crank if both batteries are charged and recharges both batteries with the engine running. This battery monitor reads voltage, current, power, and cumulative watt hours. Flooded deep cycle lead acid batteries should be charged no more than 50% of capacity. In the auto mode, your bilge pump should be connected directly to the battery through a float switch. The positive battery terminal shown here should be covered since the battery box has no top, which allows the engine to remove battery gases. This is a more or less typical potable freshwater system, but they vary widely from one boat to the next. The expansion tank after the demand water pump keeps the pump from cycling off and on as much. Black wastewater is collected to be pumped or can be ground and discharged outside the 3-mile limit. AIS helps you know what large vessels are close and lets you call them by name if needed. AIS uses VHF frequencies, so it's only good for several miles. Regular FM radios can get local weather forecast, and a ham HFSSB radio can get grid weather files and short emails using WindLink. Most sailboat exhausts go through an aqualift muffler that needs a vacuum break in the raw water hose to prevent the engine from flooding. Your raw water strainer needs to be checked and cleaned so your engine can get sufficient cooling water. Be sure to read the latest version of your engine manual carefully. Single screw boat handling is definitely a learned skill, and all boats are somewhat different. You need to practice with your boat until you learn how it reacts. To make a turn within one boat length with a right-hand prop, put the helm down hard to starboard and use forward and reverse thrusts to turn as shown in this slide at 1, 2, 3, and 4. Traditional monohull sailboats with normal engines can't exceed hull speed. Optimum cruising speed is normally about 80% of hull speed. This free version of PredictWind gives you the results of several weather models. The paid version can do weather routing for you. Weather is extremely important, especially offshore. You don't want to be caught in a severe thunderstorm or even worse. Consult all the weather sources you can find and be careful. Most boats will withstand more than the crew, but why be uncomfortable since cruising is supposed to be enjoyable? The Huawei binoculars on the left don't require focusing and have a built-in lighted compass and rangefinder, so they're very convenient. These are a few of the most useful knots you should be able to tie quickly. The America's Boating Club free app has a section on knots under References and then Ropes and Lines. Especially when you're planning offshore routes, you should also have an escape route that is shorter so you can duck for cover if needed. Your planned routes in OpenCPN can be exported to your Helm plotter as GPX files. For longer routes, large paper charts are easier to use to visualize the whole route. You can then plan waypoints with OpenCPN. Traditional paper charts are being phased out, but you can print your own NOAA custom chart or have a print-on-demand chart agent print official, larger D-size drawings for you. A falling tide can leave you aground, and you don't want to anchor near a wreck and risk fouling your anchor. The Navy is back to teaching celestial navigation, and it's certainly a useful skill for a serious offshore cruiser. For extended cruising, you may want an asymmetrical spinnaker or a code 0 sail for drifting conditions. You may need to outrun a storm and still conserve fuel. A boom preventer is a safety device when sailing downwind. An accidental jibe can easily damage equipment and people. Wave height is dependent on wind speed, length of time it's been blowing, and the fetch or distance over which it acts. Jiffy reefing can reduce mainsail area without having to leave the safety of the cockpit. Be careful about a flogging jib leech and clew, as it may make it impossible to reef if you wait too long before reefing. Inflatables with a safety harness and jack lines are just good insurance. Don't forget to clip on even in the cockpit at night, as you may not see what's coming. Also clip on anytime you're in heavy weather. We all hope we never have to face a man overboard situation, but we need to be prepared and practice just in case. In high seas, you may need a man overboard pole with a flag. Trying to find a basketball-size head in heavy seas can be very difficult. Fire training is also important and usually readily available at your local fire department. If you don't have a washdown fire pump, a 3-gallon bucket with a lanyard will help. Don't use water for a diesel fire and shut off the fuel if at all possible. The free America's Boating Club app lets you easily build and email a float plan to a trusted friend. Be sure to check carefully both entry and exit requirements for foreign countries. You don't want to be denied entry and have to retrace your whole cruise. To visit, you may need passports and visas. You have to have an FCC marine radio station license and an operator permit in most foreign countries, including the Bahamas. You should make contact by radio or phone and fly the yellow quarantine flag until cleared into port. After clearing in, it's customary to fly a small courtesy flag as a sign of respect. Do you have a realistic cruising budget based on your boat and your living habits? Boats cost money to operate, and things can easily break in the harsh marine environment. Please be extremely careful as stuff happens. Follow the rules of the road, but do whatever you have to do to prevent collisions, including breaking a rule. Thanks very much for watching this video, and we hope it has helped you. Look for an index to our other free videos on our sailingtoucan.org website.